In August 1945, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, unleashing an unprecedented level of destruction. This action was not only a retaliation for Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, but also a stern warning to the world: do not dare to provoke the United States. In the aftermath of these events, it became a widespread belief that no power on Earth could threaten the world's most powerful superpower. On September 11, 2001, 19 extremists from remote mountainous regions of Afghanistan brought shame upon the United States once again. They used Boeing aircraft to launch a jihad targeting the heart of New York City, crashing into iconic buildings and striking at the very nerve center of the U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon. This was the tragic and defining event known as 9/11. On the morning of September 11, 2001, as millions of New Yorkers awoke and prepared to begin a vibrant Monday, crowds poured into the World Trade Center, a bustling complex made up of 7 skyscrapers. At the same time, Mohammed Atta was on the phone with his co-conspirators, confirming that their plan was ready and that the 4 targets had been finalized: American Airlines Flight 11, United Airlines Flight 175, American Airlines Flight 77, and United Airlines Flight 93. At 7 a.m. local time, at Boston Logan International Airport, American Airlines Flight 11 was completing final pre-takeoff procedures, preparing for its scheduled journey to Los Angeles International Airport in California. 5 extremists, led by Mohammed Atta, included Abdul Aziz al-Omari, Wael al-Sheri, Walid al-Sheri, and Satam al-Sukami. They disguised themselves as ordinary passengers and carried small box cutters, successfully passing through security checks and boarding the plane. This flight carried 92 passengers, along with 11 crew members. The captain was John Oganovsky, and the first officer was Thomas McGinnis Jr., a former U.S. Navy fighter pilot. At 7:59 a.m., the wide-body jet was cleared for takeoff from runway 4. 8:13 a.m., while flying over central Massachusetts at an altitude of 26,000 feet, the pilots received instructions from Boston Air Traffic Control to turn right. Shortly after, the controller instructed the flight to climb to a cruising altitude of 30,000 feet, but received no response. At the same time, in the business class cabin, Mohammed Atta and his accomplices used weapons to overpower 3 individuals, injured 2 flight attendants, and slashed the throat of a male passenger. They then forced a flight attendant to open the cockpit door and stormed in. Caught off guard, the captain and first officer were quickly overpowered. Mohammed Atta, who had received professional flight training, took control of the aircraft. Meanwhile, his accomplices forced passengers to the rear of the cabin, threatening them with a bomb. 8:16 a.m., 2 minutes after the hijacking began, the aircraft leveled off at 29,000 feet, but quickly deviated from its planned flight path. At the Boston Air Traffic Control Center, screaming sounds could be heard, and controllers began to sense something ominous about American Airlines Flight 11. 8:21 a.m., the aircraft's transponder was turned off, making it much harder to track. 8:23 a.m., Air Traffic Control repeatedly tried to re-establish communication. 8:24 a.m., Mohammed Atta mistakenly broadcast a message meant for the passengers to Boston Air Traffic Control instead.
Nobody move. We are returning to the airport. Just stay quiet and everything will be okay.
Meanwhile, 2 flight attendants, Amy Sweeney and Betty Ong, managed to contact American Airlines. Betty Ong said,
"I am Betty Ong, a flight attendant on Flight 11. I believe we are being hijacked, possibly by terrorists. first-class passengers and 2 other attendants are injured, and we can't access the cockpit. The door is locked.
8:26. The plane accelerated and flew southward. The hijacker spoke to the passengers again.
You're returning to the airport. Don't attempt anything foolish.
8:37. Air Traffic Control contacted United Airlines Flight 175, which was also en route to California, carrying 56 passengers and 9 crew members. United Airlines Flight 175 had been in the air for 23 minutes, cruising at an altitude of 33,000 feet. At approximately 8:43, the pilots of United Airlines Flight 175 reported to Air Traffic Control that they had heard unusual noises from American Airlines Flight 11. However, shortly after the communication ended, unidentified hijackers who had boarded United Flight 175 stormed the cockpit and killed both the captain and the first officer. The leader, Marwan al-Shehi, a well-trained pilot, took control of the aircraft. At this point, both planes were under the control of extremists. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 finally turned toward Manhattan, flying south toward the World Trade Center. New Yorkers were used to planes flying overhead, but this one felt different. It was flying unusually low, at a speed of up to 700 kilometers per hour. The roar of the engines echoed through the city. Seconds later, the massive Boeing aircraft crashed into floors 93 to 99 of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Hundreds were killed instantly, including everyone on board and many inside the building. Over 38 tons of jet fuel ignited upon impact, sparking a massive fire. Nearly 1,000 survivors were trapped, facing extreme heat and thick smoke. Roughly 200 people, overwhelmed by panic, jumped from the high floors. The event was broadcast live on national television. Some reporters initially misidentified the aircraft as a small twin-engine plane. Despite the severity of the incident, this incorrect information was relayed to President George W. Bush, who was visiting an elementary school in Florida at the time. He initially believed it to be an accident caused by pilot error. Evacuation efforts at both towers were underway, but no one realized the true fate of American Airlines Flight 11. They had no idea that another disaster was about to unfold. After the hijackers took control of United Airlines Flight 175, they quickly diverted it from its intended flight path. Unlike American Airlines Flight 11, Flight 175's transponder remained active, allowing ground personnel to easily detect its change in course. All attempts at communication with the flight crew were met with silence. Inside the cabin, although the passengers were restrained, several still managed to make phone calls to their loved ones. At 8:52 a.m., a male flight attendant named Falkman contacted United Airlines maintenance office in San Francisco to report the hijacking. The call abruptly ended after 1 minute and 15 seconds. Shortly afterward, the aircraft's communication and reporting system received a message.
I heard about an incident reported on your aircraft. Please verify that everything is normal.
After the hijackers' identities were exposed, they significantly increased the aircraft's speed. At 8:52 a.m., another passenger, Peter Hansen, called his father. Hansen was on the plane with his wife and their 2-year-old daughter.
It's really bad, Dad. A flight attendant has been stabbed. They have knives and even bombs. Everyone is terrified. The plane is shaking violently. I think we're going down. They're going to crash into a building. Dad, don't worry. If it happens, it will be over quickly. Oh my God. Oh my God.
By 8:58 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 was over New Jersey at an altitude of 28,500 feet, heading toward New York City. Within 5 minutes, the plane accelerated and rapidly descended in altitude. At 9:03 a.m., just 17 minutes after the North Tower had been struck, the aircraft, traveling at 950 kilometers per hour, crashed into the south tower of the World Trade Center, penetrating floors 77 through 85. August 31, 1988. At Dallas-Fort Worth Airport in Texas, USA, 101 passengers boarded a Boeing 727, preparing to depart for Salt Lake City, Utah. The flight number was Delta Airlines Flight 1141, with an estimated flight time of about 2.5 hours. The aircraft had arrived earlier that day from Jackson, Mississippi. Some passengers were continuing on the same aircraft to Salt Lake City. The Boeing 727 had been in service for 14 years. Aside from minor boarding door malfunctions, the aircraft appeared to be in good condition. However, no one realized it harbored another fatal flaw. The flight was commanded by 48-year-old Captain Larry Davis, who served as the pilot in command. The first officer was 37-year-old Carrie Wilson Peckler. The third flight crew member was 30-year-old flight engineer Stephen Judd. While on the ground, the crew reviewed the weather along the route from Dallas to Salt Lake City. The weather in Dallas was clear, with calm winds. The only notable factor was the presence of birds near the airport. The leader, Hanjor, skillfully manipulated the situation. From 9:17 to 9:22, he repeatedly broadcast over the public address system, claiming that the plane had been hijacked and instructing passengers to remain seated. He assured them that the plane would land safely once a ransom was paid. Because the passengers did not resist, the hijackers' actions proceeded without obstruction. At 9:29, Hanjor turned off the autopilot and took manual control of the aircraft. The plane accelerated to 850 kilometers per hour and began a rapid descent. American Airlines Flight 77 was being tracked on radar by the Dallas Air Traffic Control Center, but the controllers mistakenly believed it was a military aircraft due to its high speed and maneuverability. At 9:37, just a few kilometers from the Pentagon, the Boeing 757 executed a 330-degree clockwise spiral descent. When it was only 670 meters above the ground, the hijackers crashed it at full speed into the western side of the Pentagon. The aircraft's fuel tanks exploded, creating 2 fireballs in the sky. 55 military personnel and 70 civilians were killed instantly, and more than 100 were injured. After the Pentagon attack, all U.S. airspace was closed, forcing all airborne flights to land immediately. International flights either returned to their origin or were diverted to Canada. But one Boeing 757-200 did not comply with this order, United Airlines Flight 93. This was the planned 4th aircraft. Due to airport congestion, the flight didn't take off from Newark International Airport in New Jersey until 8:42 a.m., bound for San Francisco International Airport in California. If the delay had lasted just 4 more minutes, what happened next might never have occurred. This aircraft carried 44 passengers and crew members, including 4 hijackers led by Ziad Jarrah. The pilots were Captain Jason Dahl and First Officer Leroy Homer Jr. At 9:03 a.m., just as United Airlines Flight 175 crashed, United Airlines Flight 93 reached its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. At that moment, the crew received a critical alert from air traffic control.
Alert for any unauthorized cockpit access. 2 planes have struck the World Trade Center.
This information confused the crew. At 9:28 a.m., while flying over Ohio, 2 burly hijackers stormed the cockpit and subdued the pilots. During communication with ground control, the desperate screams of the first officer were heard.
Mayday, mayday, get out of here, get out of here!
A flight coordinator on the U.S. West Coast quickly alerted the command center in Herndon, Virginia. Senior officials were swiftly evacuated from the White House and the Capitol. During the ensuing struggle, First Officer Homer was pushed into the passenger cabin. 2 other hijackers took control of the rear section of the aircraft. At 9:31 a.m., Ziad Jarrah activated the intercom and made a deceptive broadcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking. Please remain in your seats. We have a bomb on board.
However, Ziad Jarrah mistakenly broadcast this message to the ground, to air traffic control. 9:39, American Airlines Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon. 2 minutes later, the hijacker announces that the plane will return to the airport. But he does not realize that their plan has already been discovered on the ground. Over 37 distress calls are made from the plane. Crew members and passengers learn that the World Trade Center has been attacked and realize they are facing an imminent threat, and that many lives on the ground are also in danger. A silent consensus forms among a group of flight attendants and passengers. They must retake control of the aircraft and foil the hijackers' intentions. At 9:52, someone shouts, "Are you ready? Okay, let's go." They begin to fight the hijackers using food carts and fire extinguishers. The situation deteriorated. Ziad Jarrah violently maneuvered the plane, causing it to shake intensely in the air. The aircraft spiraled out of control toward Washington, D.C. at a speed of 906 kilometers per hour. At 10:01, 2 of the hijackers were killed by the passengers. Upon learning this, Ziad Jarrah began praying and decided to crash the plane. At 10:02, passengers successfully broke into the cockpit. In the end, Jarrah pushed the control yoke forward, causing the aircraft to crash into an uninhabited field in Stony Creek Township, Somerset County, Pennsylvania. At 10:03, all 44 people on board perished. The September 11 air attacks in the United States resulted in 2,996 deaths and over 6,000 injuries. It was later revealed that the intended target of United Airlines Flight 93 was the United States Capitol. Had it not been for the heroic sacrifice of the passengers, the death toll that day would have been far greater. To this day, the tragedy of September 11 and the true motivations behind it remain the subject of intense debate. Many theories have been proposed. Some suggest it is impossible for a few Arab men using cell phones from the mountains to have orchestrated such a complex and coordinated attack. These theories suggest that the conspiracy was orchestrated by the top levels of the world's leading superpower. According to reports, the motive behind this plot was to justify the subsequent invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, thereby expanding U.S. control over Middle Eastern oil resources. A 2006 survey revealed that more than 1/3 of the American public suspected that federal officials either assisted the 9/11 terrorists or knew about the plan and did nothing, deliberately allowing it to happen as a pretext for war in the Middle East. There is some evidence supporting these theories. First, the absence of the U.S. Air Force remains unexplained. Despite receiving distress signals from the aircraft, NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, failed to provide timely assistance. Only a few fighter jets were deployed, and none reached their targets in time. Secondly, the hole in the wall of the Pentagon was too small to have been caused by a Boeing 757. The collapse of the World Trade Center Towers 1 and 2, especially Building 7, is viewed by some as the result of a controlled demolition rather than structural failure caused by the plane impacts. Experts argue that the impact force alone was insufficient to cause such catastrophic collapses, suggesting that other weakening factors must have been involved. Thirdly, investigations revealed that a large number of put options on United Airlines and American Airlines stocks were purchased shortly before September 11. This has led to speculation about insider trading, with some believing that individuals with prior knowledge of the attacks placed bets accordingly. On January 2, 2019, the hacker group, the Dark Overlord, threatened to release secrets related to the 9/11 attacks. In a post on the website Pastebin, they claim to have obtained 18,000 classified documents from insurance companies and U.S. government agencies, including the FBI, Transportation Security Administration, TSA, and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA.